Hi, and welcome back to Essential Beliefs. In this session, we want to make some application of what we introduced in the last session. We're talking about these foundational and fundamental beliefs, practices, laws, customs, mores that are so foundational that societies can't live without them. We can't violate them not for long and get away with it, or another way of saying it, we can't violate them and prosper and do well. And the great thing about it is there's promise on both sides. There's promise that basically if you do good, if you sow good, you're going to reap what is good. However, if you sow evil, or as Scripture says, if you sow the wind, you'll reap the whirlwind. So it's very important that we understand this. And guys, as I've said throughout this whole study, so many of these truths are stated in such a concise way that they almost become like proverbs. They almost become like, just cultural sayings. And the problem with that is they can become trite because they're used, maybe in some ways overused, not used properly, etc. And when they're used that way, we fail to see the gravity and the depth. I want you to understand this idea of reaping what you sow has application in every walk of life. It has application in every interaction. Now, it doesn't just take interaction. It has application to what you do with your life, what you do with your time, where you spend your money, where you spend your efforts, where you spend time. Because what you get back is going to be based upon where you allocate the resources that you have. That's what sowing is all about, is you take resources, you put them in the ground, and then after a time you reap what your resources have created, investment, if you will, a payback, or however way you want to say that. And we're going to look at several ways that we say it. By the way, when we have a phrase that gets repeated in multiple different ways, that's an important concept. It's an important phrase. If we keep coming back to the meaning of the phrase and constantly coming up with other ways to express it, that in itself should tell us this thing's important. We need to focus on this. We could spend this whole quarter just talking about sowing and reaping what you sow. But let's just, for the next few minutes, let's just bring it home to where you and I live, okay? Because this has impact where you work, where you go to school, where you play, any place that you interact with not only any other person, but the way you interact with the forces of the world, the way you interact with, as I mentioned before, your time and resources, etc. So, if you make a determination of, I am going to invest, and I don't like that word because it's been tainted, in many ways by the idea of American greed and all of that. But it really is about, and investments in their purest sense are about reaping beyond what you sow. You put money into an investment, and a good investment is going to give you dividends. So when we decide to live by this rule, to embrace it, our lives are going to immediately start becoming more successful. So let's say, for instance, that you make a point to bless 10 other people tomorrow. Now, what I mean by blessing them is giving them something that demonstrates your love for them, your appreciation for them, how they've impacted your life in a positive way, etc. And that can be as simple as a smile, but smiles can also become trite. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. So you walk into work and you see a coworker, and your coworker says, "Hi, Jim," and you say, "Hi, Bob." Okay, if you do that with a smile, there's a blessing on that, but I think you also understand that's a social convention. That's something that we're kind of expected to do. it prevents social sandpaper of us kind of irritating each other. It kind of greases the wheels, so to speak. But it's an expectation, and anything that's done that's expected is entitled. It's not a blessing. Okay, but let's say you went into work and you say, "Hi Jim, hi Bob. Man, Bob, I'm going to tell you, Jim, I'm going to tell you, working with you for these last 7 years has been one of the greatest opportunities in my life." Simple statement. But it's a statement that went beyond social convention to sharing something that is true. And that's very different from flattery. Flattery is sharing something that is usually embellished or whatever, but to tell someone and to have the thought to tell someone. So I want to challenge you to do this, kind of our homework for this. I want you to set your mind that tomorrow you are going to bless 10 people's lives in a verbal way. You're going to go beyond good morning, good day, good to see you, or glad to see you, did you have a good weekend, all of that to, I want to tell you how important you are to me. I want to tell you what a joy you are to me. I want to tell you what your smile means. Something like that, that you go beyond what is kind of expected, what is that kind of social Teflon that keeps us being able to work with anyone. Now, but I want you to consider, if one person responds to your blessing, you've sown and you've reaped. You sowed a seed of being a blessing or of blessing someone, and you've received reaping of you being a blessing to someone else. What you're going to find is the greatest majority of the time, if you go out of your way to do that, you're going to find a response that's very, very similar. You know what? I enjoy working with you, or I really appreciate our friendship, or whatever. Now, so if you do that to 10 and one of them responds, now understand, with sowing and reaping, it's not always an immediate response. In fact, that's part of the way that you know it's heartfelt. Someone drops in and says, you know, yesterday you told me how much you enjoy working with me, and I was thinking about that all day. And you don't know how much that blessed me. I mean, it just lifted my day. And I want you to know something. Right back at you, kid. Now, it may not be the best way for someone to phrase it, but you get the blessing. Even if someone says ditto, you're getting the blessing back. Not everybody's articulate, not everybody's good at expressing, but the fact that you're getting them, their eyes, their attention, their blessing in whatever form that they give it. Now, if you give it out 10 times and 5 people respond, you've multiplied your return. You're reaping now multiple times. And I can guarantee you, you will reap better returns than that. Because human nature is sowing and reaping. God designed us this. The reason the world works this way is He designed the world that way, and He designed us to fit into it and to work with it. Now, because of the fall, we get out of kilter. Things get out of kilter, but we get back to, you know what, I'm going to reap today, and as a result of that, I'm going to sow. So, I guarantee you, you're going to receive better than 1 or even 5. And soon you're going to start, if you start doing this every day, soon you're going to find out that they are going to start initiating blessings back to you. It's not just responding to what you say, because they feel better every day that you say this. And one of the things that happens to us, it's just human nature. When we receive a blessing, we want to share a blessing. Now, I understand there are people, we're going to talk about some of them in a moment. There are people who can't get enough, that are takers. But that's not the majority of people. And in fact, sometimes our perspective of people gets slanted by a few bad apples. All right. There are people that you know of that when you see them, you just light up. Watch them. Watch them and see why it's that way. Now, it's easy to say, well, they got a pleasing personality, they're a people person, they're this or that. And you don't have to be any of those things. But if you watch what they do, they reap. They sow. They sow, they sow, they sow. Now, they find joy in sowing, and reaping is just gravy. Reaping is just icing on the cake. They love sowing. One of the things that happens is, as we learn to sow into human relationships, sowing blessings, and there's millions of other ways that we can sow good in people's lives, but let's just talk about verbal blessings for this session. When you get to where you sow it and you start getting the reaping back, you feel good, not just about the reaping, but about the sowing. So the sowing becomes self-perpetuating. And if you'll watch those people, does someone come to mind right now, the kind of person I'm talking about, that when you see them at church or at work or wherever, just seeing them, you light up? I mean, just being in their presence is a blessing to you. Now watch them and see why they're that way. And what you're going to see is they sow and they sow and they sow. And some of it may have to do with they've been blessed so much by God. Some of it may have to do with personality. But I'm telling you, anyone can learn to do this. And anyone can reap the benefits. Because if we don't live with the understanding that I'm going to reap what I sow, we think we can violate that. We think that we're going to be able to receive blessings in another way. That we're going to be able to scam God or God's laws. Now, on the other hand, is there a person who makes your life miserable? Okay. You reap what you sow, but you can't control the soil, the rain, or the sun. You see, when you sow the blessing, you have to give it up. Now, you've got to trust the law of sowing and reaping. You've got to trust God that it's not going to come back to you empty. Put out the seed and watch what it does. But what we sometimes do is we put out the seed and determine that I want that seed's produce. I want that person's approval, or I want that person's this or that or whatever. And please understand, every seed that is sown doesn't germinate. Every seed that is sown, of the ones that germinate, not everyone comes to become a full-grown plant. Of everyone that becomes a plant, not every one of those bears fruit. But when you look at all the seeds that you've sown, you're going to receive a bountiful harvest. It just may not be from that one seed. You can't put your stock in one person, etc. And what I mean by stock is, there are people that we tend to run into during the day that ruin our day. We try to smile. We try to give them blessing. And what we get back is a black hole that just sucks everything around. And then we walk around with a cloud, ignoring all of the other seeds that is sown, ignoring all the other reaping. And it seems like 9 people can give us a blessing, but if one person doesn't, or if one person gives us a cursing, that ruins everything. And we're ignoring reaping that should bless our hearts, because we got our heart hurt by this one person. It could be a coworker, it can be people we live with, it can be a spouse, etc. So when that person, when I let that person ruin my day because I sowed 10 seeds and one of them didn't grow, and I decided that one is the one that that's the corn cobs I'm gonna eat off. Well, it's kind of arbitrary, and you're kind of putting all your eggs in one basket that way. And now, therefore, the rest of the day, I ignore the blessings that I received because of the one that I didn't, or because of the cursing that I received. So let's just for example, let's use where I work. Let's say that, just for argument's sake, that Barrett is a jerk, and he comes to work every day, and he's a jerk. So I come into work, and I see Barrett. Hey, Barrett, good to see you. And then it sets me off, kind of wow, I mean, that didn't feel good. Then I see Janet. Janet says, hey, how's your day? Well, it's okay. I see Dan. I see Paula. I see Charlie coming in and out. All these folks smile when they see me. All these folks greet me. they're sincere, they greet me. But you see, I started out that day with one person who did not give me back what I sowed. And because of that, am I going to decide that the rest of the seed or the rest of the plants that I received are worthless? Because this bad seed tainted all the good ones. Doesn't work that way. By the way, Barrett's not a jerk. Well, not most of the time. Using an illustration, but you understand what I'm talking about. Have you ever known an emotional black hole person? Someone who's just constantly needing. Seems to always feel like no one loves me. It's like the folks on who post on social media. They'll post things just to get validated. And understand, if you have to ask for validation, you're not being validated. You're being accommodated. And I've seen people who will post something and say, I know nobody's going to respond to this. Or somebody that will post, I'm having the worst day ever. And they don't tell you why because they want you to ask why. No one's going to care enough to read this post, copy and paste it. No one's going to stand up for God because I'm going to say, I'm standing up for God. Please copy and paste this if you believe in God. And all of these things where folks are trying to get a response. I want to see if anybody's going to answer me. I want to find out who my true Facebook friends are. So if you'll respond to this post by telling me one word or, all of those kinds of things. And then what's happening is I need to be validated. And I'm feeling down or I'm feeling sorry for myself or my self-worth is either low or it's taken a hit or something like that. So I'm going to put a word out. Somebody come to my rescue. Please, I need to know that someone loves me. Now understand, we all need to know that. We all need to have that affirmed. What I'm talking about is the approach to doing that, because this is a person who has said, I need to reap, I need to reap, I need to reap. And when someone says, I need to reap, remember what we talked about last time. You got to punctuate it from, if I have the seed in my hand, what do I expect to happen if I plant it? If I end up with stalks of corn, what do I think preceded that? And there are folks who are saying, I need corn, I need corn, I need corn. And then the question is, what did you sow? If you sow, you're going to reap. If you bless, you're going to receive blessings. But there are people for a lot of different reasons who have gone through their lives and maybe they've been beaten on, maybe they've been abused, etc. And I understand those things. But what it forms them into is a black hole. They suck everyone else's positive emotion, but don't give anything back. Watch what they sow and to whom they sow it. The so-called Debbie Downer type person that when they walk into a room, it's like with a cloud, and they're looking to see who's going to notice me or who's going to affirm me or, heaven help us if you walk by that person and you don't see them for whatever reason. Maybe you're tied up in your own issue. You don't see them and they're going to be offended because you didn't acknowledge me. Now, did they acknowledge you? Have they sown? You see, the law can't be broken. And so many times people think I'm the exception to the rule. I can reap without sowing. It's not the way relationships work. Everybody wants someone to love them. Everybody wants a multitude of people to love them. Everyone wants to be loved, and they have a right to be loved. But how do you reap love? You sow love. And you sow love with the idea that you're going to broadcast it. I'm going to throw it everywhere. Everywhere I go, I'm going to throw love. And guess what? It's going to grow and it's going to come back to me. Now, remember, there may be time between when I sow and I reap, but God has given us a law. If you sow, you will reap. You're going to reap as you sow, in the way that you sow, to the degree that you sow, in the manner that you sow, with the attitude that you sow, with the words that and the inflections that you sow. you're going to reap. And there's so many people for all kinds of different reasons that believe they can violate that law. They can always be a taker, a receiver, a reaper without sowing. In the Beatles' Abbey Road album, Watershed album, at the very end, there is a song called The End. And the last words on that last album were, and in the end, the love you take is equal to the love you make. What they're saying is, as you sow love, you'll reap love. If you want to reap love, if you want corn in the garden, plant corn kernels. All right? Now, I would argue to you that their formula is a little off. And in the end, the love that you take is greater than the love you make. Because you see, the harvest comes back. I may only have 10 seeds, but if I plant them and water them and nurture them and take care of them, I will have ears and ears and ears of corn. Way more than I put into the ground. And in the end, the love you make, or the love you take, is going to be so much greater than the love you make, the love you give. How many people believe they can break the law of as you sow, you shall reap? Have you ever known a person that is that Debbie Downer, that black hole emotionally? Have you ever known such a person to get enough validation to be satisfied? Is there ever enough? No, because you see, it's a black hole. It's a black hole of emotional draw. Have you ever seen such a person happy? No. They're always looking around for the person that didn't acknowledge them. They're always looking around for who's going to do it next. Never satisfied, never happy. Why? They don't understand the incredible value of the principle of reaping what you sow. They believe they can skirt that for whatever reason or motivation. In other words, they believe they can make a liar out of God. I think every one of us needs to reevaluate our lives. How well do I sow love? How well do I sow mercy? How well do I sow acceptance and peace and all of these things? And we're just focusing right now on blessings. But if you think about it, if you want people to light up when you walk into the room, sow those things. Sow and sow and sow and watch what happens. Well, it won't happen for me. It's a law. It's a law. Now, the same thing happens in the church. And we've kind of set this up. We've set people up with the idea that you can reap without sowing. And I blame the church growth movement part for this. People shopping churches for features and ministries. And back in the 80s and 90s, when Christianity first began to decline, churches began to panic. And what are we going to do to get people in? Well, let's offer them this. Let's offer them that. It's another way of saying, if you'll come here, you'll be able to reap this. You can reap a playground for your kids. You can reap a youth ministry that will raise your kids for you. You can reap a comfortable building with comfortable pews. You'll reap, social opportunities. You will reap fellowship you don't have to pay for and meals that you don't have to pay for, all that kind of stuff. So there are folks who learn to come to church or to become a member of a church based on what they can receive. They're reaping without the idea that they need to sow. And in essence, we, Christendom, have taught them that. And by the way, they're the most critical and vocal about what they don't like. Why? Because they're not sowers. They too don't understand the principle. Christians, or folks claiming to be Christians, don't understand the principle of reaping what you sow. They just want to reap. And they'll make Christians feel guilty for not reaping, for not giving them. You're supposed to give this to me. You're supposed to show grace and mercy to me. You're supposed to take care of me. Not understanding that that's not the way families work. They just want to reap. It doesn't work. It goes against nature itself. Once, Charlotte and I were on a vacation, and we went to one of the well-known metropolitan churches, and I won't name it because that's not the focus of it. And it's one that you can see on TV, and, you know, it's one of those that everything's great and whatever. We just happened to be there on a Sunday when they were talking about the problem they had with getting volunteers to teach, to man their ministries, all of those kinds of things. And one of the things that they had resorted to, and they had put in their bulletin, is they were now paying people to serve. This is the church that invites you to come. They don't invite you to be a disciple. And now they are reaping what they sowed. They have thousands of people, but very few, very, very few who are willing to serve. Because they reached out with, come here and reap, come here and reap, come here and reap. And if you do that and then say, oh, by the way, you need to be involved, that's kind of a bait and switch, isn't it? And they're suffering for that. And what they were talking about was the financial draw of having to have people in the nursery, of having to have people in the cradle roll that they were paying to be there. And all these different things that they had to, because there were not enough volunteers. What I would suggest to you is there weren't enough disciples, because sowing and reaping is understood by every disciple. There are then two-way Christians. What we were talking about is a black hole Christian. It's a one-way Christian I received. Then there are two-way Christians. If you smile, most everyone will smile back. As you do it more consistently, even the sourpusses will begin to respond. Now remember, there's time between sowing and reaping. They will begin to melt. You'll see a thawing. Not all harvests are the same. Not everybody responds in the same way to the same degree, but you're going to see people begin to thaw. And what you will start doing is reaping from them. See, that's two-way Christianity. That's where I reap and you reap, I sow and you sow. And that really is what spiritual gifts is all about, is I can't do it all. I can do this. If you can do that, then we both will sow into this thing called church, and everybody will reap. So many ways to express this reaping as you sow. It's been called karma. What comes around goes around. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Actions dictate consequences. As you give, you receive. As you make your bed, you lie in it. Bad beginnings make bad endings. Bread always falls on the buttered side. Chickens come home to roost. Curses like chickens come home to roost. Dishonorable persons tend to reappear. Echo responds to the call. Every man is the architect of his own fortune. You get out what you put in. Give and take. Harm set, harm get. And paybacks are, well, you've heard a lot of different ways, but let's say not good. You see, when we have, and there's, I mean, if you go on a website, you're going to find just dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of different ways of saying you get what you sow. You reap what you sow. And that demonstrates how fundamentally understood, because it's repeated and repeated so many different ways. The problem is it often doesn't sink in, or the application of it doesn't sink in. You ask anybody, if you sow corn, are you going to get radishes? No. Ask them, if you treat people well, will you get people treating you well? No. Then you don't understand what you just said. Now, the thing about it is, as if we take these essential beliefs, begin to notice how they integrate with one another, because God is one. So all these teachings are not, in adverse to each other. They're not in conflict with each other. They mesh together very well. So let's go back to some that we've looked very quickly. How does you'll reap as you sow? How does that work with do unto others as you would have them do unto you? Can you see the parallel just from the words? if God tried to explain to us all the ways we should treat other people, now in this situation you need to do this, now in this situation you need to do that, there's no end to the situations. That's a lot of the laws of the Old Testament, is how to treat one another. Now if you lose this, or if you cause harm in this, here's what you need to do, etc. He summed it up in a very powerful way. How would you like to be treated? Then treat other people that way. If our culture, if the world just lived by that, what a great place this would be. But look, do unto others is another way of saying, as you reap, you will sow. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Sow unto others as you would reap from them. Treat others the way you want to be treated in return. Sow treatment to them, reap treatment from them. So the way that Christians give and receive, I give my seed to the ground, I receive food back. So I sow and reap. You're not going to get any return if you don't sow. Now there's people that think they can. And sometimes for a while, it may seem like you can. Somebody out of the good grace of their heart will give you something, but they're going to grow weary of that after a while. Then you have to resort to manipulation, making them feel guilty. And the people that I've described before, the one-way Christians, the black holes, the Debbie Downers, if you'll notice, they're often very manipulative people. They'll play on your guilt. They'll play on you're not much of a Christian. You have a duty, all of those kinds of things. And sometimes we're susceptible to that. And we forget sometimes, now wait a minute, show me where you're sowing, and then we'll talk about your reaping. And it's not that you're sowing to me. Show me how you're serving others. Show me how you're blessing others. Show me how you're sowing. And then, because I don't see it. Because you see, if we see a sower, we respond as reapers. But if you don't see it, what you understand on a very intuitive level is this person is expecting me to give and give and give, and they're going to take and take and take. And you know what? My supply may run out unless I'm receiving resources from others or from them. You see, it can be indirect. Jim serves Bill, Bill serves Bob, Bob serves Steve, Steve serves Jim. I mean, it's circular, and that's what spiritual gifts are in a nutshell. Let's see how it connects with eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth. There's justice in reap what you sow. You remember, eye for an eye is about justice. If you do this, the consequences are this. They're going to be equal. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, foot for a foot, life for a life. There's justice in there, but there's also reaping what you sow. If you kill, you're going to reap death, okay? It's learning how to share in kindergarten. Eye for an eye prevents abusing other people, because I don't want to lose an eye. I don't want to sow the loss of my eye, so I don't want to reap the loss of my eye, so I'm not going to sow the loss of somebody else's eye. Reap what you sow goes hand in hand with eye for an eye. It goes hand in hand with do unto others as you would have them to do unto you. And that's one of the ways that we can test how foundational and how important these are, because they all interlock. They lift each other up. They embolden one another. They make one of these laws makes the other laws so obvious and so powerful. True social justice is fairness and sharing, giving and receiving. And remember, it's a law. Now, in closing, as I mentioned, giving and receiving, the place we ought to see that the most is in the kingdom of folks who are disciples. And by the way, this is one of the fundamental tests of being a disciple. Do you sow? And if so, what do you sow? Do you sow benevolence? Do you sow grace? Do you sow smiles? Do you sow uplifting? Do you sow all the things that go along with being Christ-like? Or do you sow unrighteousness? Do you sow bad attitude? Do you sow being someone who criticizes all the time, et cetera, et cetera? When we mutually sow, there's plenty for us to mutually reap. That's Acts chapter 2, verse 42 and following. Everyone brought what they had, and no one had a need. All the needs were met because God makes sure that we're blessed to the extent that we have plenty for what we need and plenty to give to others. And in times when we don't have plenty, then it comes. That's when we reap. And it's amazing, amazing how God brings us a harvest when we run out of seed. And he does. And that's a faith thing. So spiritual gifts are almost like spiritual bartering. Hey, if you'll do this ministry, I'll do this ministry. I have these spiritual gifts and I'll do this, but I'm not good at doing that. So if you'll do that, I'll do this, and it'll all get taken care of. And if we all do that, every need of the church will be met. And you know what? Every Christian will be excited and happy and joyful. Why? Because that's what they're sowing. So what are they getting back? Happy and joyful and uplifting. You see the point? I can't do what you do, but I can do what I do. And I want to sow into your life, either directly or indirectly. Again, it's the same way. I'm going to serve whether it's the youth, I'm going to serve the golden agers, and what comes around goes around. It's going to filter through. They're going to serve someone else. They're going to serve someone else. They're going to serve someone else, and that person ends up serving me. We sow in the church in a communal garden. Every need is taken care of. Have you ever noticed? And guys, I haven't seen a church do that better than Fort Gibson does in all of my time. There was in Chickasha, in a congregation that across town from where we were, they decided they were going to grow a communal garden. In the communal garden, they took about an acre, and the church members sowed tomatoes and carrots and radishes and all kinds of things that people could. And they invited the community to join them in this. What they found was overworked Christians and neighbors who were grateful, but who loaded up on vegetables and reaped without sowing. Guess how long that communal garden lasted? You get the point. That's the way spiritual gifts work. We sow in ministry. We sow our efforts, our good graces, our compassion, our love, our blessings. We sow them in a communal garden called the church, and every need is taken care of. Everyone doesn't do everything, but every need is met because everybody does something. The problem is, in American churches, there's the 80-20 rule, that 80% of the sowing is done by 20% of the members. I would challenge you, wherever that's the case, 20% of the members are true disciples, and the rest are reapers who are not sowers. They're violating a very, very fundamental law of God. And eventually, the sowers are going to burn out, give up, and quit. Because they've sown so much in everybody else's garden, they don't have anything to eat. And so they become selfish. No, they have to tend to their own garden because there's not enough resources to go around, because 20% of the people are doing all of the sowing. I hope that you will reflect on the notion of the law of sowing and reaping. I hope you will look around to see how many different ways it's violated. I hope you will look around and see the people who are living it and lifting it up, and watch how people respond to them. I hope that you will take my challenge that tomorrow you will bless 10 people's lives, that you'll keep blessing those lives for at least a week, and watch the response that you get. Don't focus on the one. Don't let the one ruin your day, because one seed doesn't germinate for whatever reason. Focus on the ones that do. That's what will fuel you to keep doing that. Be a blessing and watch how God, through others, will reap in you blessings beyond your ability to conceive and to count. God bless you as you become a sower and, yes, a reaper. God bless you as you become a more deeply involved member of the body of Christ, as we can get rid of this COVID, and as we've seen the devastation and part of what happens when we can't sow to one another as directly as we used to. And I hope what it's created in all of us is a thirst to get back to tending the garden and letting God grant the increase. I love you. Look forward to talking to you soon. Sow, 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 and reap, reap, reap. God bless you. I love you.